Thank you for joining us today. We're here to talk about how Storyworth uses TV ads for a successful holiday season. Um, I wanted to introduce myself first. I'm Elizabeth Burgess. I'm Director of Client Services here at Tatari. And just since we're in the business, I wanted to mention that I'm currently watching the morning show on Apple. And with us today is also Greg, and he is head of marketing at Storyworth. I will let you introduce yourselves, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Kapp. I'm head of marketing at Storyworth, which I'll tell you more about in a moment. Um, my favorite TV show that I'm watching right now is The Bear on FX and Hulu. And just because I've only finished it pretty recently, I have a lot of cool theories and ideas about where season 3 is going to go. So if we want to use the Q&A for discussing fan theories and stuff, totally game for that. But yeah, I'll switch it back to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I love The Bear as well. That was fabulous. And I can't count how many times I've watched Ted Lasso. So, all right. So, just want to talk a little bit about Tatari. Tatari is a platform for running and measuring ads across streaming TV and linear TV. We have worked tirelessly for the past 7 years to turn TV advertising into a digital-like experience, so measured, real-time, and with the ability to manage varying levels of investment. Brands can use our platform to buy TV in-house or use our optional managed service offering, where we work with our clients to help strategize their campaigns and optimize TV plans on a week-to-week basis. We work with over 200 brands across many different verticals. Our brands are also in various stages of growth. We work with smaller brands that are really just getting started, adding TV into their mix to scale up. And also we work with some more legacy established brands. So now that we've covered an intro about Tatari, I'll turn it over to Greg to talk a bit about Storyworth.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So Storyworth is a fairly simple service, but it's also very meaningful. Essentially, we email writers one question a week about their life. It could be a very light topic, like what were your favorite toys as a child, or it could be a very heavy one, like have you ever feared for your life? For the record, I've actually written about both of those topics in my own Storyworth memoir. In any event, storytellers will respond over email with their own answers to these questions. And then at the end of the year, those stories are published into a hardcover keepsake book for the writers and their families. The background story and the founding is actually that Nick Baum, who's our founder and CEO, hatched this idea out of a personal desire to capture stories from his dad and to be able to get them in a format that he could share them with his kids and their children. He built a prototype and then realized that there might be a market for this tool outside of his family. Fast forward to today, and I think it's safe to say that Nick was proven right. We've now been in business for over 10 years. We've captured millions of stories, and we have writers all over the world. And then just a little bit more about the business and sort of what we see about the customers that use Storyworth is that it's typically purchased as a gift. Our average buyer is in their 30s, 40s, or early 50s, buying the service for an older family member. Our sales are mostly concentrated in the lead up to major gifting holidays like Mother's Day, Father's Day, and Christmas.
Great. Thank you, Greg, for that. Let's see. So just to talk a little bit about, I'm not sure, it looks like, oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
What was your channel mix and why did you turn TV?
Yeah, so prior to launching TV, we advertised across hosted different platforms, and I don't know if it's covered on the next slide in terms of the things like Google paid search and podcasts and affiliate channels, paid social. Facebook and Instagram in particular had quickly grown to become a really large portion of our mix, almost a majority, if not an outright one, but by late 2020. So our main goal with TV really was to find a place that we could spend incremental dollars or that we could put dollars to work that could produce more efficient customer acquisition costs than just simply putting incremental ad dollars to work on some of the channels that are shown here. And just to expand on that for a moment, this is probably, not lost on anyone in this audience, but if the platforms are functioning properly, or if your agencies are functioning properly, then your spend is already concentrated across the most efficient placements or most efficient podcast shows, or the being shown to the audiences most likely to want to buy your product on a platform like Facebook or Instagram. And the next dollar that you invest in any given month is likely to be less efficient than that core that you're putting to work. And so really that was what we were betting on or hoping and wanted to test, was that TV would outperform those incremental dollars that we were putting to work on other channels. Lots of reasons to believe why TV would succeed. And I think there were also some things that are maybe even harder to price in. So the fact that it was going to help diversify our marketing mix, that it could help improve performance on other channels by allowing users to see us on TV and then be more likely to click on our digital ads and things like that. But in particular, I think we were already sort of bought in on wanting to test TV. We were aware that the CPMs are actually quite compelling for what you're able to get, and certainly working with a team like the one at Tatari, we're able to get sort of low single digit dollar CPMs for a really meaningful ad unit. It's this huge screen, not skippable, not muted, a video ad that's really compelling. And maybe what you're giving up a little bit is some of the targeting. You're not displaying it on one-to-one or to a particular person like you can on some digital platforms with their more advanced targeting. But for a more broad use service, or one that has broad appeal, that might be a great trade. So if we're being honest, that was really what we wanted to test, that sort of hypothesis in theory. We were bought in on TV, and I think the big question for us was who should we work with, and to segue into the next section, I think what ultimately sold us on wanting to work with Elizabeth's team was both Tatari's thoughtfulness around the test plan that they produced for us, and to maximize the number of insights that we had learned from a test plan, and then also their measurement expertise to confirm that what we test, and we'd be able to learn a lot from the test.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Yeah, we appreciate that. We do put a lot of thought into the testing, just knowing it's a make or break situation, right? We'd like to, of course, see success out of the gate, knowing that a lot of our clients are performance marketers. And so they want to see that there's actually some performance happening there, aside from all the other elements that TV does bring in terms of marketing mix. So in terms of the test, let's just move forward here and talk about that. So before we dive into specifics, I just want to call out the investment levels. So this was a 7-week test initially. We did tests on linear and streaming. We were at $40K per week for linear and $20K per week for streaming. And these are just some examples of some of the networks that we tested it to. But what you see here is that you don't need that much money to get started into testing, which is a good thing. So we tested as many networks and publishers as possible during that pilot time. And these included larger, like high reach networks, as noted here, the HGTVs, E's, and KLCs. And then some more, smaller, more efficient options were included as well, just again, knowing that efficiency matters right out of the gate. So we did lean into linear TV, given the target audience demo that Greg outlined earlier. And we wanted to include streaming, though, because we know that captures the cord cutters and that incremental audience that they represent. We also just wanted to mention that we did test several creative concepts. And this is something that we will encourage every client to do, because creative really does matter. We see, I apologize because it seems like my internet might be slow and I keep going off camera and back on, so it's coming back. We do see large performance deltas between different concepts. And so we really do encourage a lot of testing. Sometimes, at least 2 if you're going to be starting out on TV. I've seen it happen before where, a pilot wasn't as successful because there was only 1 creative. And then in other cases, we've seen 2 in the mix, and we've seen such a good performance with 1 that we would optimize out into that, and it just changes everything. So I think that's just another point that we would make is, the creative testing is equally as important, in my opinion, as the networks that are selected.
Yeah, absolutely. And from our perspective, we really ultimately wanted to answer the question, does TV work? Can it be sort of a really compelling part of our mix, or one that's sort of competitive with sort of those incremental dollars that could be invested in other channels. But I think to Elizabeth's point, maybe what you find from the test is that the test itself doesn't totally back out, but there's pockets within there that do. And it's this combination of creative on these networks, on these day parts, that is way more efficient than sort of the rest of our mix outside of television. And sort of having this test set up and designed with all those permutations in mind on the creative network and day part side of things, we were able to, kind of tease all that out. And maybe one interesting aside is Elizabeth and I were working on this presentation and preparing for it yesterday. We were both surprised to see the weighting of this test, because this was actually conducted a few years ago. And we were surprised to see how much spend was going to streaming at the time. It's funny because back then there was far more viewership that was happening on linear TV, certainly ad-supported viewership, than maybe is sort of what's transpired over the last few years, where just there's been this massive shift in viewership toward streaming. So this actually looks probably more like a test that Tari might propose today in terms of sort of the emphasis of streaming, just because that's almost impossible to ignore at this point, given that shift in viewership, and actually something that Elizabeth has sort of shared some of the team's market awareness of over time recently with us. But I think kind of showed that we needed to sort of look around the corner and be aware of this trend in viewership, which is a very interesting one in TV. In addition, and then sort of makes these tests just that much more complex, because you need to factor in these very different viewers and platforms in addition to within them make sure that you can understand the best parts of the mix that are performing appropriately, or that are performing best.
Yeah, agreed. And we are definitely seeing some landscape changing on that one. Okay, we're just going to take a moment here to talk about how marketers should measure TV campaigns. So how Tari measures TV campaigns results for clients could be really an entire presentation in and of itself. But essentially, TV has traditionally been measured by panels, whereas digital ads on Google or Facebook offers closed-loop attribution by placing a pixel on your website. And Tari actually uses this same method with a pixel. So regardless of your TV partner, it's important to have access to data quality and quality data. So we have 100% IP passback from major streaming players. On the linear side, we have access to 30 million smart TV homes. We're the only TV platform to license the triad of LG, Vizio, and Samba smart TVs. This is the largest data set available in the industry and the smart TV world. We combine the third-party data with more than 100 million mobile and web daily events across our clients' first-party data, plus our proprietary IP-level device graph to measure TV with world-class standards. We do measure business outcomes and are able to export all of this data into Rockbox to help inform plans. And that's what really puts you into a solid position for any campaign, but coming up now, holiday campaigns, by really knowing what's working. So getting back to Storyworth, following our testing phase, we did double down on what worked, and we were able to establish a strong core of networks that we knew drove solid results for us, and really build our holiday TV strategy around. We also continued testing because we are always thinking about testing, and this helps to increase reach and really build up that core base of networks that we want to be on. And we're always looking at creative optimizations I mentioned earlier as a lever.
And maybe one quick thing I'd highlight is that in some ways these networks were pretty intuitive for us. So, for example, Hallmark really maps well to our buyers from a demographic standpoint, and the holiday specials that they run in Q4 and the family orientation of the programming. It's contextually incredibly relevant for us as it relates to marketing our product. But we still had to test to ensure that these were in fact going to be kind of really core performant networks for us. And for example, I think you could maybe make a counter case for why we think HGTV might not really back out well for us. As an example, it's typically priced at a premium from a CPM basis relative to other networks. And that CPM premium could undo the strong response that network ended up driving for us, given it's relevant and high quality audience. So, obviously being able to test and address these sort of hypotheses or ensure that we confirm or not that these are indeed our core networks was really core to the test. And also to her point, it's not like we stopped measuring after this initial test phase. And this list is not set in stone. It's changed and it's grown over time as we've been able to continue to explore and test new networks. And we find that changes in programming and audience and saturation effects or pricing trends over time can sort of lead this mix to change over time generally. So, I think she'll cover Tari's approach to buying and campaign planning that sort of makes sure that we are able to kind of factor in the latest and greatest insights from our most recent buying.
Great. Yeah, let's get to that. So what are the best practices for Q4 TV campaigns? So this is just a timeline here that shows you basically Q4, a time that we note as Q5, and then of course there's Q1. So the holiday season, it is technically Q4 and Q5. So basically it's all the way into that first week of January. Typically the market is fairly tight, so locking in inventory earlier is better. Is definitely better. And that is especially if you rely heavily on like Black Friday, Cyber Monday for those campaigns, because definitely the week or two leading up to that time frame is in high demand. But, backing up even further, it can be really important for people just to, see you on TV, get you top of mind so that when they are having to choose, the perfect options or selections at that Black Friday, Cyber Monday timeframe, you are top of mind, and that's important too. So you really want to get that reach out there and get the frequency out there, in all of your plans. We also then see a second push happening in December for gifting, obviously approaching like that Christmas timeframe. And what's interesting is that by the week of Christmas and then that Q5 time period, which is the week after Christmas and then early into January, we do see the market much more open, where you can really take advantage of less demand and better rates. Something we haven't really talked about here is retargeting. I think most, marketers really have some retargeting things they do. We offer that as well. And that's something that we also would strongly encourage during this time frame, because people might visit your site. And again, just trying to stay top of mind with retargeting campaigns outside of, just your more standard linear and streaming approaches as well. So in terms of, what this is, you might be asking how we identify core networks that we mentioned earlier. So, the HGTVs, Hallmarks, Bravos, Lifetimes, etc. We basically have a campaign manager. This is what you're seeing on this slide. And it's a platform that analyzes historical data. So you are securing placements on the right networks at the right frequency and at the right rates based on your KPIs. So some clients actually do build their own media plans. Others have a dedicated media buying team that uses this tool. But it's really great because we do have that all that historical data in here, and it really helps the team. And it's, definitely the machine learning side of all this really helps with accuracy and efficiency in everything that we do. For Storyworth, getting back to this, one of the spots that we bought was actually the Mariah Carey Christmas spot. This was a test, and we wanted to do this in order to really kind of get a more premium spot into the mix. And this was the Mariah Carey Christmas special that was on CBS. And this is, this was a fire sale that we offered. You can see here we have this 80% discount. We noticed a premium spot. A fire sale is a premium program that is typically on a broadcast network. It's available at an extremely discounted rate. 80%, sometimes it can be 60, 50, but either way, it's, something that we feel is very powerful to add into a mix. And these drive really high reach at a much lower CPM than the rate card. It's a great way to reach a large audience. It's oftentimes unaffordable and really inefficient without that heavy discount. So going forward here, Greg, do you want to talk about the performance?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'd note on testing more generally is that we're really comfortable doing a lot of it in Q4. Our conversion rates go up given the nature of the product and it often being a gift. And our budgets are higher. So a larger absolute dollar amount going to testing new networks or testing new kinds of ad inventory is actually a smaller percentage or a totally reasonable one as a percentage of our overall spend that makes us comfortable with this. And we were super excited about this Mariah Carey spot in particular because, to Elizabeth's point, we're really on broadcast networks. We're really going after this kind of broad reach tentpole program, mainly because the CPMs can be pretty prohibitive. But they make up a big part of our TV ad inventory overall. So we'd love to test it, and it's a place where we have a little presence. So if there was a way to sort of evaluate what it's worth to us, that would really help educate future buying decisions around this kind of inventory. So this test was super exciting for us. You can see here the lift was very significant. We drove over 1,000 visitors, and that's just in the moments after airing. I remember this spot vividly because I was watching it live myself with our CTO, who I think was just worried that maybe we'd crash the site or something. So we were watching it together and talking about it over Slack. Thankfully, everything was fine. We handled the influx, no problem. For what it's worth, the efficiency of this spot was still a bit weaker than maybe our core mix, which I think is probably to be expected. It still was a little bit of a higher CPM than what we're typically paying on cable and sort of our core programming, but it's just a very different type of audience that we were excited to test running our marketing against. And importantly, we're able to come away with the data that helped us value that spot, and we'll be able to inform future buying decisions of similar types of inventory based on what we learned there.
Great. We also were on the Today Show, and this is something else that is a way to reach a massive audience of a single buy. Do you want to talk a bit about the results here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the results here were, arguably more compelling. I mean, the lift itself was more meaningful, especially when you consider we had multiple spots slammed together, or multiple spots over time. We were just able to drive more lift in aggregate. But what was really exciting about it was that we drove a 33% lower cost per visit, and what we really care about is that we drove almost a 50% lower cost new customer relative to the rest of our overall mix. So that was great because essentially that gave us the desire to, and subsequently have incorporated the Today Show into our buy going forward as just a larger, just to help us expand out sort of the core of our buy. And I think obviously the fact that this was still a bit of a fire sale or discounted opportunity means we do have to make sure that we continue to capture stable pricing and viewership, but you kind of get a sense for how much more efficient this was. We actually have a little bit of room that we can afford to maybe increase our rates if necessary in order to secure the inventory, and being able to test this and know just where to dial in the rate is super duper important. But obviously a testament to sort of Tatari's approach and the data that we get at such a granular level.
Yeah. And the only thing I'll add to that is that, when you're on this, Mariah Carey, et cetera, there's just this brand halo element, this brand equity that is also associated with it. So I think that's another great part of being on these premium opportunities at these fire sale rates, is you're getting some brand value out of it on top of getting the performance and the lift that we already mentioned.
Absolutely.
So moving on to creative, we did mention that we've mentioned that we've tested a lot, and we did find a champion in all of this. Though it performed the best, we did continue to use other creatives in the mix for variety. And we didn't necessarily create a new ad for the holidays, which would, helps in terms of like production costs. We didn't have to increase the production cost for that. So we did use this champion ad. It was previously tested, which is, of course, what we always want to be doing, and continuously optimizing. So we knew this was going to be a great one to really play heavily into the mix for the time frame. We also will note that we've done some testing on our own, and we've seen that a persistent watermark really does drive stronger performance, around 8%. So we do encourage that. There's it's also family-oriented creative concept, so it really aligns with that holiday sentiment. And then the other thing I'm going to note, because we're going to watch this in a minute, is we don't really see. We've seen advertisers walk away from using VO to call out that there's a sale happening on Black Friday or Cyber Monday. Doesn't mean that none of them do, but a lot of them have strayed from that. Just knowing, I think consumers expect sales during this time frame. So it's really nice to not have to necessarily modify your creative for it. Just using the best creative works. Sometimes you can put a banner in, something on an end card, but don't necessarily have to redo your voiceover, in our opinion, for what we see. Or anything else you want to add with?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. I mean, I think that captured, vast majority of our kind of opinions on the creative as well. We love it. You'll see the spot here in a minute. One thing that we have tested, and I think to Elizabeth's final point there around sort of being able to just tweak the end card or feature a sale or something with relatively little work, is that we have tried things, given the nature of our product, it's gifted digitally to the recipient. So as a result, there's no shipping deadlines or things like that. So we've experimented with, say, in the final week leading into a holiday of putting a little banner on that says no shipping deadline, or essentially encouraging sort of the last minute purchase. These things are really easy to tweak and add and traffic out to the stations. So always worth keeping that sort of list in mind of things and permutations that you can try with your creative. Could generally most concepts will allow you to tack those things on, no problem. And maybe for what it's worth, we'll be watching sort of our champion creative here. We have tested other types of ads, and I think some of the most common ones are user testimonials, both ones featuring actual customers or ones where we have professional actors that sort of act out the types of testimonials that we receive from customers. Those generally can perform well too, but that's why you have to test, and you'll see in a minute the spot that generally performs the most and gets sort of a lion's share of our spend as a result.
Great. I'll just remind everyone of how Storyworth started, because you'll see Nick in this spot. And I just also will say that we do see that authenticity matters when it comes to creative. I know that Greg just mentioned testimonials. These were real people that, are actual customers, and we're not showing those ads, but authenticity does matter. And I think this really rings true, and it comes through loud and clear with this ad. So I'll go ahead and move forward.
This is my dad. Storyworth started when I emailed him a question about his life. I wanted to save his stories so my kids would remember them, but I was surprised by how much I learned about him and how meaningful it was for us to revisit those memories. So now, just like I did with my dad, we'll send you weekly questions about your life. All you have to do is respond with a story, and after a year, we'll print your stories in a beautiful hardcover book. Everyone has a story worth sharing, so give the gift of Storyworth at storyworth.com.
All right, so just to wrap up here, just wanted to tell you what we think, would be key takeaways. Use a healthy mix of networks, definitely. Tier our networks. Tier 1 is the larger premium networks. Tier 3, the more efficient ones. So use a mix of all of them, tiers 1 through 3. Premium buys, live events, and maximize reach, and maintain efficiency whenever possible. And then also measure on outcomes. So lift is important. What will drive you to the site? CPVs, which is like cost per visit, cost per acquisition, ROAS. And then, plan and buy using historical data. And that really is important, especially going into these larger revenue, and sales timeframes of your cycle. And, having that historical data is really important. Take advantage of the market fluctuations, the rates. And then, as we mentioned, and you just saw, leverage that champion creative, use a creative concept and elements that have been tested. And again, that's really going to help maximize your performance during the holiday season.